Now on HTV, Gardening Time.
Hello again, welcome to Gardening Time. Yes, I'm in the City of Birmingham's TV garden in Kings Heath Park on rather a chilly day. Later on, I shall be joined by a crime prevention officer. We'll be looking at some chrysanthemum dahlias, but mainly a programme all about tips. And of course, to do that, I need my good partner, Geoff Amos.
Hello, Aaron.
Well, around about Easter, Geoff, it's time for tips, isn't it?
I remember writing something once, 101 jobs for Easter, and I found out that there was 1,001, never mind 101.
Well, we're not going to have time to get through even 101 today, but perhaps we can give you a lot of tips, little ideas, perhaps to get out there. And the first one is never to go mad at it over Easter. A lot of people will be out for the first time.
That's right, and watch your back too.
Yes.
Cold winds on your back, murder.
I think that cold wind, you know, Geoff, it really caught our hydrangeas the other day. We'd just taken the old heads off.
Yes.
-5, it was a real cracker.
Hydrangeas grow too early for their own good, don't they, really?
The flower buds do.
And you get these new leaves coming in, they're very tender, and you get a frost like we had the other night, and it catches the top buds that you really want.
And I think I'd be tempted in that instance, when they clearly are damaged like that, to prune down to the next two buds. Do you agree?
Yes, to the next two. You may not get a flower out of those. The flower is generally in the top one, but it's all you can do. If that's destroyed, it might as well come off.
It's come off and it can be composted.
That's it.
And also, I think in the border, it's the last time for doing a lot of that winter pruning, isn't it?
Yes.
Caryopteris that wanted pruning hard, the fuchsias.
That's right. People don't like pruning things when they're starting to grow, you know, but some things, it's just the time to do it. And this is one.
This is one we should have got done. There's a spot down here where we just 2 buds up, 4 buds up there from the base on this cornice here. And I think all these growths want cutting off fairly hard, Geoff. If I look right down there, right down at the very base.
We ought to say why we're doing it, though, you know, Harold, because it's growing. People say, what's he cutting that off there for?
I want lots of vigorous growth and nice coloured stems next year.
That's it. It's the new stems that have the colour, isn't it?
But that's half the story, the pruning, you know. The other half is the feeding, isn't it?
Ah, it is.
And I reckon it's a good time of the year. Get one of these general fertilisers.
Anything that you cut down and that you're expecting to make a lot of new growth, you've got to give it something to live on, haven't you?
That's right. Something like about 2 ounces to the square yard, and then lightly cultivate that in all the way round.
That's right, and then hope it'll rain. Howard, were you going to do anything about that rhododendron there?
Well, I thought there's a tip here. You know, the people, particularly in the damper regions, up in the borders and that, they'll be able to do this a treat. There was a lovely example here, Geoff, of a branch that's been sitting on the floor there of this rhododendron. And I reckon April's the time just to make a little depression in the soil, something like that.
Lay that in?
Lay that in, something like that. Hold him down and put a little bit of soil over the top.
And something over the top of that?
Well, it's convenient because I've actually got a piece of slab here. I've got it eyed up as a little job. I reckon that'll take 18 months.
Sometimes you can find them laid themselves.
Maybe,
you know, people go on and say, how can I take cutting of a rhododendron? You don't want them sometimes. You can find little plants like that underneath and you can make your own.
Hope nobody finds that one when it roots, except me. What about our hostas under there, Geoff? Any tips?
I should think so. You know, slugs and hostas go together, don't they? The slugs are around there now, I bet. Now, if a slug eats into a hosta leaf when it's at that stage, it bites in like that and it makes a hole right through the leaf. And as the leaf opens up, you've got a row of holes and you think, I've got 1,000 slugs here. It was one that did the damage at that stage.
Now, in this can, we've got liquid slug-it, haven't we? And I think if we watered that...
That's better than pellets.
It's also very much safer, isn't it?
Yes. It's the same stuff, actually, that's in the pellets, but it's in a liquid form. And I think for that job, particularly, 2 or 3 goes with that will keep it right.
Great. I'll go across there, Geoff, because April is also a great time for the end of the deciduous planting. Come on to that in a minute. But it's also really evergreens. I've got here a lovely plant, a Buxus sempervirens elegantissima, one of my favourite variegated plants.
Yes, one of the main things with evergreens, because they've got leaves to support all the time, they've got to have a supply of water all the time. And rain is never enough, is it?
Nope, not this time of year.
You've got to water them. And I always leave a source around a depression, you know, where you plant them, just enough to hold the water, because it runs away if you don't.
Perhaps I ought to say why I like to plant this time of the year, Geoff. I believe conifers and evergreens make new root just at this time of the year.
Yes.
It's their active season. They'll grow away actively. If we plant them any other time other than this or August, they sit the other 6 months of the year.
That's right. There is a period, though, when they're still in that ball and you've got to water it.
Yeah. So that was a good plant. How about the ceanothus here? That is blue mound, a form of repens, a great plant for a hot sunny position. Any of these evergreens are best planted now.
Yes, full of flower, that.
Well, it's interesting. That's full of flower, but we can also prune ceanothus, can't we?
Not this one.
Not that one.
Flowers up.
It's got to be the autumn flowering ones. It's
Autumnal Blow and Birkwoody Eye, and there's 1 or 2 varieties that flower from August onwards.
flower on the new wood.
So you can prune it back like we did that cornice. The new wood comes up and flowers on the top.
You leave a framework against the wall or as a freestanding bush, but it's hard back as you like.
Yeah, it's peculiar that there's ceanothus coming out now and yet there's one going to flower in autumn. You've got to know the difference, haven't you?
You really have. I know the difference with this, though. This
Great,
lovely peach garden lady, it's the only dwarf one for patio work, container work. She should be potted on now, but tip against peach leaf curl, Geoff.
Well, they say if you can keep the leaves dry, you can keep peach leaf curl away. It's about the only way we can because you can't spray them these days. But nothing very effective, I don't think. So for a period, I would be content to put a polythene bag over that every so often, especially when it rained. It also protect the blossom from frost.
Get a better set. Or take it into the greenhouse or conservatory while the flowers are out.
But these will grow peaches. I've seen 7, 8, 10 peaches on a bush just that big.
Right. You're not going to see much on those roses, though, Geoff, are you?
And they poor, eh?
They're
Aren't
terrible.
They poor?
Now, I think the point here, this was one of these mail orders through one of the national newspapers, and I was just astounded at the quality of that. Now, we have complained on behalf of the gentleman to the mail order protection scheme, and he is being sent some new roses. But it reminded me also, this time of the year is when the last of the bare root material's about, and when the special offers are being made. Don't get caught out with special buys with rubbish like this.
Two little thin growths like that when you should have 3 or 4 big thick ones as thick as my finger at least. And these should have been thrown away at birth, shouldn't they?
Well, let's throw that away and get you to pick that bare root tree, Geoff. Because I think bare root trees, this is the last opportunity we've got of planting anything like that.
It's almost gone, the last opportunity, I would say.
It
You
has.
just about do it.
But don't get caught out with these special offers.
And watch that it doesn't come into blossom or fruit, because that's got to come off. The tree that's planted now hasn't got any chance of fruiting or anything else much this next time.
So even if it's grown in a container well, we're still going to take the flowers off.
Yes, it's vital, I think, else the tree will collapse in the middle of the summer.
Great tip, Geoff. But let's just remind you, some weeks ago we set a little competition. If I set that down, we'll give you details of what that question was again. Now, if you remember, it was all about the shredded compost material. We asked you what the best use would be for that composted shredded material. Was it A, as a source of plant food? Was it B, as a potting compost? Or was it C, as a soil conditioner? And yes, the answer was C, and thousands of you got it right. We've drawn 2 lucky winners, and they are Mrs. L.K. Field from Churchdown in Gloucester and Mrs. Blackmuir from Outwell, Wisbeach in Cambridgeshire. The shredders are on the way to you, and I think with that it's time to move on and look at another range of garden tools. The everyday items most of us use in the garden. But would you also believe these are the tools of the criminals, the burglars who break into your homes and the sheds? The man to tell us all about that is PC Andy Swain.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you for inviting me onto the programme to talk to you about very basic crime prevention advice. Don't leave things laying around that makes it easy for the criminal to operate.
Now, you're telling me a high percentage of these people are just opportunists?
Absolutely. 90% of all crime in our country is committed by opportunist criminals. In other words, we give them the opportunity to commit crime on our doorstep. Now, it may not be us, but our neighbours as well.
So everybody must put the spades, the forks away?
Absolutely, yes.
But surely it begins at the boundary, doesn't it? I've planted berberis around the TV garden here, and the theory that they're not going to want to jump through that.
That's absolutely correct. Perimeter security is absolutely first and foremost in any security at the home or any complex at all. If you get the perimeter security right, then you're on a good start straight away.
So that's a good secure lock on the side entry, things like this?
That's right. Make sure that people can't get through the side gate or get in over the fence very easily. If you make it difficult, then you're less likely to become a victim.
I don't know whether you approve or not, but I actually plant those lovely thorny blackberries along my fence, so if they're going to fall over, Gonna have to put it
Excellent.
in out.
That's right, yeah. Anything that makes it difficult for them to get into your perimeter, into your garden, is a good move.
So we've made the perimeter secure. We're keeping the tools away. We're putting them away, probably in the garden shed. Any tips there?
Absolutely, yeah. Lock them away securely in the garden shed and use a good padlock and a hasp and staple to secure the shed. Now, it's a nice one. You spent a lot of money on this one. You needn't perhaps spend that much, but as long as it's a hardened padlock and you use coach bolts on the hasp and staple so that people cannot just rip it off.
They cannot rip them off and they can't get a spanner on to undo them either.
That's right, yeah. And once you've put the stuff away in the shed, when you're not in the garden, then put something up at the window so that people can't see in to the shed to see what equipment you've got in your shed. A net curtain, a piece of hardboard, anything like that deters people. If they don't know what's in there, they're not likely to break in to see. It's when they can see what's in there and see there's something that they actually want and will be of use to them.
Well, we said the spade and fork might be used, and even the shears. I understand the shears are one of the prime items for breaking into double-glazed patios and things.
These are so strong, excellent burglar's tool. He doesn't carry his tools with him anymore. He looks for the tools in your garden and my garden, and if we make it so that he can't get hold of them readily, he'll go elsewhere.
Now, we say those are the things he might use. What about the motor mowers, the shredders, the more valuable items, perhaps the electrical power tools? Should we leave those in the shed?
We can leave them in the shed, but let's chain them up and make sure that we postcode all of our property, from the shears to our spade, fork, all of our electrical and more expensive items. And any serial numbers that there are on all of these motor mowers and electrical items, record them and postcode as well. If you make it look to the criminal that that item is going to be difficult to dispose of, then he won't take it in the first place. He will leave it alone.
Well, great. It's something I found before Christmas, actually, and I don't know whether you approve of these, was actual passive infrared detector, and a relay there sends a message if anybody enters the shed to this unit in the house, which plugs in the mains, sets an alarm off for £60.
Excellent. Why not? The cost of actually supplying all these tools for your garden is going to be far and away above that price. It gives you an early warning that somebody is in your shed or your garage, and you then know about it so that you can get out there and stop what's going to happen. It gives you that little edge. It's
Great,
a good
Andy.
device.
So it's security on the perimeter, secure shed, and most important of all, be tidy.
That's right. Lock all those tools away. It may not be you that's the victim, but your neighbour may become a victim because of your carelessness.
Great, Andy. Well, we're unfortunately right out of time, but Andy's promised me he's going to do some notes for a fact sheet at the end of the programme. We've got to take a break, so join me back in just a couple of minutes. Hello again, welcome back, and welcome to two Geoff Amoses. What do you think to this, Geoff?
My nose isn't as red as that.
Well, it's from the ladies of the Trehubert and District Gardening Club. You know, you and I have offered to go along on the 18th of April to their 13th annual Spring Flower Show.
Oh, looking forward to that.
Blind Rontha in
You
Wales.
say it, you say it.
Well, that's one venue that we shall be going to. We have a bit of fun there. The second one I shall be going to is the Jardinery Garden Centre at Tarporley, up in Cheshire. And that is the 23rd of April. That's an evening do. In both cases, go along there. We'd love to see you. Let's put our friend Geoff at the back.
Mind what you're doing with him.
You were very good on chrysanthemums, Geoff, so I actually thought you might like to talk about chrysanthemums.
Well, I'll tell you what I was thinking about saying. A lot of people are taking delivery of chrysanthemums now because they send them out when you ask for them. You can get chrysanthemum cuttings in January, February if you want them, if you've got the conditions to keep them in. But people that haven't got good conditions, they're receiving them now, early April, mid-April.
Well, a little package like that, Geoff.
That's how they might come. And we haven't opened these, have we?
Well, I've just dropped them on the floor to prove what the postman does to them. But it's interesting, the better nurseryman will pack them in such a way, I think you can see in there, at the end, they are looking nice and fresh, all ready for potting up.
And there's quite a few bobs worth there.
There is. There could be quite a lot of money's worth in them. And I think it's worth then unpacking them just as soon as they arrive. If you can't pot them straight away, keep them somewhere cool. And
It looks like they made a fuss of these.
Oh, they're packed as a... I like to see them. Nice little bit of packing around the neck. That's where they usually get damaged, and you have to be very careful when you take that off.
Yes.
And then this is the lovely thing about these. There's actually 10 plants in there, if I get this in the right direction. You can see they're all labelled individually, or in pairs in this instance, so you have to be a little bit careful when you take them off. There's one pair. Shall I untwist the
Go on
the
then.
name?
What I want to show is what you do with them. These have obviously come out of a greenhouse, and so you couldn't plant things like that outside. You've got to do something about hardening them off, haven't you?
Not even our friends in Devon and Cornwall.
No,
Still got to be grown on a bit.
No. And so what I would do, I'd put them up into a compost. It doesn't matter whether it's John in his or whether it's one of these no-soil composts, or no-peat compost in this case.
This is a no-peat one we're trying, yeah?
About like that. Firmed in. You don't firm them in as much as I do, but there you are.
Well, you live in the days when the old John Innes was literally knocked in with a stick, Geoff. Quite rightly so.
Well,
Quite rightly
with
so.
chrysanthemums, we used to pummel them hard.
That's right.
But that now would stand, well, if you hadn't got a cold frame, and I suppose everybody hasn't got a cold frame, they might put them against a wall and a sheet of polythene lay over them for about another fortnight or 3 weeks. To get them used to being outside, then they could plant them out.
They've got to be grown on, hardened off, and stopped. I don't like to stop them when I actually put them in. That's taking that little growing point out.
Yes.
I like to leave it growing for a week.
Not
or
at
so.
that stage.
No, it's too much of a check.
When they were planted out, I would do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I might want to stop them before that, particularly if they were late.
Well, please yourself. But
I shall
anyway,
do, don't worry.
let's make this point. Don't plant them straight outside. Put them somewhere half sheltered and gradually harden them off, and then plant them out perhaps the end of April, middle of May.
These are the garden varieties. I was just looking at the label at that. That's Bronze Fairy, one of these pom-pom type.
Yes.
It's a bronze colour, a nice garden variety.
That's right, and packed like that, there's certainty. There's
Yeah.
no trouble.
10 plants in there, there'll certainly be £8 or £9 worth. Now, the other thing we started off a while ago, Geoff, was a dahlia.
Uh-huh.
And this is actually one of a friend's I've brought along to show. It's
Now
a
you're
pot dahlia.
worrying me with that knife. What are you
I
going to
want
do?
to hold the foliage out of the way so we can prove it was that pot dahlia. I'm not going to cut anything off yet. There's the stem of the pot grown dahlia. Now these you can buy for 40, 50 pence each, but I'm interested in getting more than just one dahlia for me 50p. Starting this early, I could take cuttings.
Ah, so you're going to be greedy and try to make 2 or 3 out of this.
Definitely.
Not that you have to, because that could be kept, again, in a cold frame, perhaps covered a little bit more than the chrysanthemum, but that could be kept in a cold frame and planted as it was about the 3rd week in May, couldn't it?
3rd week in May in the south. I'd probably want to go the 2nd week in June in the Borders region, 1st week in June in Birmingham.
Yes, but what are you going to do and why?
Well, if my greenhouse is running a little bit warmer, it's going to grow a little bit more. If I kept it in a warm greenhouse, I'm going to finish up with something running to flower buds. That's too hot.
Well, you wouldn't want to do that, would
No.
you? No.
So what I would actually suggest is, if I wanted to take a cutting off that, if I get my knife in just at the back, just underneath there, I'll cut it off and then shakes. I like to get just a base of the tuber.
Yes,
That's got him.
but you haven't destroyed that. There's a part under there that's going to grow again.
It'll shoot again. But what I wanted to do, you see, was to take that, and it's not gone hollow. I think that's important. If it's actually gone hollow, then you've got to cut up until you find a piece that's not. Cut just below the leaf joint, like that, nice and clean. And I'll be taking off those 2 lower leaves. And because it's nice and soft and fleshy, and I know you hate this,
No, I wouldn't do that.
I would. Stops it sweating so much. I think this is perhaps newer thought.
It makes me sweat when you do that. I know it's stopping that sweating.
I cut a bit off you that way. And in he goes, a light compost. If it was anything heavier, I would have made a hole with a pencil. He wants to go somewhere warm, where there's a bit of mist, perhaps from a mist unit, or you put a polythene bag over it to keep the humidity. It must be out of the sun. There's a shady space in the greenhouse, but not on a shelf out of light. It wants good light, but not direct sunlight.
And the strange thing is that will make just as good a plant as that tuber.
That's right. It'll probably have more vigour, you know, Geoff.
Yes, and it'll flower and it'll be in flower by end of June, July.
Do well.
Yes.
So that's dahlias. I wouldn't bother with rooting powder, and a multi-purpose compost is sufficient. What about a fuchsia too there, Geoff? There's some lovely value for money fuchsia varieties about at the
I
moment.
reckon that's a darn good tray of fuchsias,
Well,
don't you?
I'm pleased you said that, because I picked this one out. And I wanted to go through the varieties, starting at this end. These are all basket varieties you could buy now. That's Dancing Flame, a really good orange.
What do you mean by basket varieties?
Suitable for trailing, hanging down.
As opposed to the ones that come straight up.
Bush varieties. Next to it, I've got Marinka. Now, I really like that. Very dark red. Basket variety. I've been growing that for years.
There's a variegated one, golden Marinka, which I like better.
Watch the sun on that. She's a bit niffy coming through the winter. You've got to keep it really bone dry and warmer in the
But
winter.
it really does arch out, doesn't it? Beautiful.
It does. And then Jack Shannon. I've not done bad with that, but I've not been over keen of it. Nice pink, though.
Yes, 2 pinks.
Yeah, two-tone pink.
2-tone pink.
And then next to that, the best variety to look for all is Swing Time, you know.
Well, it's an old one and a good one, ain't it?
Never lets you down, and that's what gardening's about, reliable varieties. And at the end, one of my favourites, Eva Borg. Huge double flowers, comes up nicely.
Old,
Great.
very old variety, that.
Yep. Now, these cost me $6.95 for 15 plants.
Yes.
Now, if you haven't got any, it's a way of doing it, isn't it? But if we take one out and you like to lift that out of the way for me, Geoff, I thought there was a tip here. Now, you could either just take the berry growing points out of the top there.
Why? Why would you take
Make
that
it
out?
bush. There's only 2 stems at the moment. I want it to go over. It's a trailing variety. Or I could take it a little bit lower, and I probably would take it down to there in this instance. So I've got shoots coming from those 2 and down the bottom here. Make it really bush.
And make 2 new cuttings.
Make 2 new cuttings.
Being greedy again.
I'm being greedy again like I was the other week.
But let's make the point that from those joints where the leaves are, they'll shoot out and be just as good a plant.
That's it.
Perhaps even be better.
That's right. Now that could be potted on into a larger pot and kept warm before it goes in the basket.
Well, why not? You could put it straight in the basket.
Well, I think it's a bit earlier unless it's got a greenhouse. Next week I will be looking at hanging baskets for you, so I'll look at the containers and then we'll think about perhaps potting them on only if you've got a warm greenhouse, Geoff.
Okay.
So, little tip there.
Yes.
Right, talking of cuttings, the ones we did the other week, no problems at all of them rooted. Just look at the roots coming round there, Geoff, just ready for potting beautifully. So cutting them off and reducing the leaf area did work all right.
Well, they aren't all reduced, you see. There's 1 or 2 that I put in there.
These, you took the ones home you rooted.
And the point is, it hasn't made a damn scrap of difference whether you cut the leaves off or not. And
They
that's what
rooted the
gardening's all
trees.
about, isn't it?
There's various opinions.
That's right.
Nice little story here, though, Geoff. A lot of us have probably grown, let's turn the flower around so you can see that, lovely new Guinea Impatiens, various shades.
One of the best new plants that I've seen in the last 10 years, this.
Superb. Some of them have got slightly variegated foliage on. If I tilt that, that's got a nice bronze foliage feel. That looks nice,
I
doesn't
like
it?
the variegated ones
Yeah,
myself.
but you know, comes in a variety of range of colours. If I swap that for the label there, you see there it is New Guinea Impatiens. That is as the name says. But just underneath the word Impatiens, it gives us a nice little diagram saying sun or part shade, and that is so important.
Yes, it is.
They get very often into too much shade.
But they can have too much sun as well.
Well, I've got one here that I had for over 15 months in the kitchen windowsill, and I think this is probably the state a lot of people get to.
That's the beauty of them. You can't keep them from one year to another, can
Yeah,
you?
ever
But you've
so
got to
easy.
do something to them. This has got, well, it's a good plant and it would flower well. But it's a bad habit.
It's a bad habit, and it's also doing something unusual. If you look on the leaves here, Geoff, you see those 2 little white lumps there?
Somebody told me they were white fly, but they aren't, are they?
Not doing a good balancing act if they are. That is excess moisture getting out, called exudation, isn't it?
This is a plant that does it.
Does this and fuchsias do that? So
Yes.
don't worry, it's not a disease, no problems.
It's a drop of moisture, excess moisture coming out at the end of the leaves, through the pores.
But I think we could prepare this by cutting him back. I'm not going to go all the way round like that, but we could cut this back around like that without any problems at all.
And that leaves the nucleus of a new plant coming, doesn't
That's
it?
right, yeah. And it could be repotted into just a slightly larger pot than that. That's always an important rule.
Yes.
Don't bury it any deeper, but I think it would grow well.
Right.
So,
Shall I have that?
Geoff? Yeah.
Okay.
And just a couple of plants that give really good value for money. I found this hardy orchid, the Pleome here. I thought this was a beautiful little orchid just to show you what you could actually do with. This is Oriental Star. These sort of things, so easy to grow in the cold greenhouse. Isn't it nice? Oriental Splendour, rather.
You can grow them on the rockery, but I think they're so nice to pick up and look at close to, aren't they? That if you've got them in the greenhouse, they're beautiful.
But for the cold greenhouse. But now for your pens and papers, information about this week's 3 fact sheets. So if you're ready, it's number 56, which is all about the primula family. And in a fortnight's time, I shall have an expert all about primulas and auriculas for you. 104 is more information on those dahlias, and 184 is all about our friends Garden Security, PC Andy Swain, so security in the garden. If you like those 3, it's a 6x8 or larger envelope, please. Numbers in the top left-hand corner. Don't forget, we do need a minimum of 28 pence in stamps in the top right. Your name and address, nice and clear in the middle, please. And you'll need to send that to us to our usual address. That's the TV Garden, Kings Heath Park, Birmingham, B147TQ. And as usual, we've got a helpline available. The numbers as follows. It's 0891 345 336. Details of how to get your fact sheets and where the latest road shows are. And I think with that, Geoff, we ought to give 1 or 2 little hints and tips, like next week I shall be looking at containers, tomatoes, watering devices, and perhaps just to whet your appetite, I'll bring in just a couple of primulas just to give you an idea of the sort of things you could be planting around the garden at the moment or growing in the greenhouse. How about those?
Your very own babies, aren't they?
They're beautiful. But that's for another week, so with that it's time to say enjoy your gardening, join us next week, and bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.